Let's find out then what the decision by Moodys means for the country. Bring in Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University's Business School. He's with me in studio this afternoon. Prof, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for coming in. So the news from Moodys on Friday was not quite a ratings downgrade, but more of that move from a stable to negative outlook. Not as severe as a credit downgrade, but it will be damning nonetheless, am I right?
Well, I think the point we must understand, I don't think many people should have expected that they were going to downgrade us. That's not how they operate. They first give you a statement of intent. They look at the outlook and they say it's either positive, stable, or it's negative. Once they change that, then they put you on notice to say, well, we've now, in our case, they've decided that they're going to change it from stable to negative. That's an important warning signal, especially as Moody's has been one of the major credit rating agencies that's always given South Africa a wide margin of doubt, giving us another opportunity. I think the fact that they've now said, look, we are now putting you on notice. We're not going to downgrade you, but you've got 12 to 18 months to prove that what you have said you will do, you will do. In other words, walk the talk.
Let me ask you then, Prof.
And that's where we are now.
Yeah, let me ask you that then about this warning that we've now received officially from Moody's. Should we take that to mean that a ratings downgrade at this point is actually quite likely from them, given that they've spoken so strongly about the things that they are not happy with the way our economy is running currently?
They're not happy, but nothing in life is inevitable. And as several of us have pointed out, it lies in our hands, especially after the so-called mini-budget this past week, where the problem wasn't that the minister wasn't frank and candid. I think that was essential, and indeed that was very acceptable, that he spelled it all out. He put all his financial and economic cards on the table. I think the problem was then already that the reaction of the markets and quite a lot of others was, but the remedies didn't match what was outlined. In other words, that there wasn't a message of strong implementation. Things were going to happen much more quickly, especially about Eskom. And so I think that what you've seen in the Moodys, in their decision, is simply to confirm the view that we really need to emphasize the remedies now. We need to indicate timelines, targets, and make them happen. And that's why, for example, I think it's a pity that some of the decisions have been postponed to the main budget in February. But more importantly, what is useful, especially against the background of the excellent mood for the nation that's been created by our rugby victory, we must capitalize on that mood to address the concrete issues. And I'm thinking now of the Presidential Investment Summit, which is this week. And I think that those factors that led to the rugby victory, such as coherence, excellence, delivery, and indeed discipline, if we can bring that to the investment summit, which is on our doorstep, we must then say to both government and the private sector, look, we've now got the message of Moody's, we're on notice, let us together turn this economy around in a concrete way that sends out a message of confidence that we're getting on top of the implementation. You know, I've said before, let me repeat it, if South Africa could factor talking into its growth rate, we wouldn't have a problem.
I'm glad you're ending that comment on that point, because we're heading into, as you're saying, this presidential summit again to discuss the economy. We had two last year, the job summit, and another one led by the presidency. But I was struck by the wording from this Moodys statement where they were talking about the lack of political capital to implement the measures that the country would have to roll out in the hopes of bettering the economy. So from that, should we take that to mean that we need then a change in political leadership, or just a change in mindset?
I think it's more a change in mindset and not falling, you know, we talk about summing up our dilemma. We want to break out of a growth trap without falling into a debt trap. That's the big dilemma which was outlined by the Minister of Finance and which is also concerning to a credit rating agency like Moody's. But what's important now, we mustn't this week at the investment summit fall into a timidity trap. We've got to say we have got certain things on the table that we will now stop talking about. whether it's by government or by the private sector. We're going to concretize them. We're going to make them happen so that you come out of that investment conference as a first step towards several other key decisions and difficult decisions that have to be taken in the next few months if we don't want to get an investment downgrade to, say, junk status by Moody's in about a year's time. So it's in our hands. It really is mainly in our hands, in the hands of government and the private sector, to now get together in a spirit of cooperation, in the sort of team spirit we saw in Japan, you know, in fact, in our rugby outcome. Let's turn that into something worthwhile so that we can show that leadership in South Africa doesn't mean excuses, it means outcomes.
Professor Raymond Parsons from the University of the Northwest Business School, my thanks to you as always.